Hi everyone, and welcome to the last of the videos for Exercise Science 230 for 2016. I'm just going to present a couple of short videos just about the different pathways that we went through in lecture number 9. So I've got lecture 9 opened up here, and the first one I'm going to go through is the ascending pathways, also known as the sensory pathways. But I'll literally go through which slides that I'm looking at on my screen, so when you're listening to this video you can refer to them straight away. So the first one we're looking at here is actually going to be slide number 14, and slide number 14 looks at the difference. It's got 9.5 at the top, and it's about ascending sensory pathways. Now we're talking about ascending sensory pathways. We're literally talking about information that we pick up in our peripheral nervous system. So it could be things like proprioception or pain or whatever it might be, sensation. And the information is being picked up in our peripheral, and it travels all the way up to the actual cerebral cortex, where it gets actually processed, and then we perform an action down through a motor pathway. So the first thing we're looking at here is 9.5. It's looking at the basic sort of patterns or constructs of the actual process itself. So if you look at it here, it says there's almost 3 different ways or 3 different processes that goes to before information is actually, I guess, understood in the cerebral cortex. And it sometimes literally gets referred to as like a relay of information. And in this slide here, slide number 14 in lecture 9, so the one in 9.5, it talks about first order, second order and third order. Now rather than needing to go into the names and the processes of all of those, the key thing to understand here, it is a relay of information. Sometimes it's a conscious aspect of processing information, and sometimes it's a subconscious process. But that's just for you to know in relation to how the actual system works itself. So in relation to how this actually works, the other point we need to understand is, and I gave this in the lecture as well, is there's some stages where, even in sensory pathways, where information will get transferred from one side of the body to the other side of the body, or one side of the brain to the other side of the brain, and that's called decussation. There's other times where it's ipsilateral, which it stays on the one side. Now I'm just going to go through and show you one example of a sensory pathway and then explain that and how that actually works, and then we'll go in and compare some of the other sensory pathways as well. So what I'm doing now is I'm actually flicking through to slide number, where are we now? So it's going to be slide number 19, and at the top it should say ascending sensory pathways, spinothalamic pathway, So spinothalamic pathway, really what we're talking about here is, even by title, we're saying it's an ascending pathway because it starts in the spine, if you like, once it's processed from the peripheral nervous system and goes up to the thalamus and what's called the VPL. So what we're looking at here is the process of where information is transferred from the peripheral nervous system. It goes up this different pathway called the spinothalamic pathway, is processed in the cerebral cortex, and from there a decision is made about what to do next, and then it's executed down a motor pathway, which I'll present in the next video. So for this particular pathway here, like I said before on slide number 19, spinothalamic pathway, it's to deal mainly with convey information about what we call fast pain, what we call coarse touch. So that's just an example of it there. Now, how this actually functions, if we go to the next slide, slide number 20, this is how it works. So your first order neuron will always be information's transferred from your peripheral nervous system, so you might get pain in your foot. So information is transferred all the way down from the neurons in your peripheral nervous system, and it gets sent up to the spinal cord. Now in this particular pathway here, information is transferred from one side of the body to the other, so it decussates from one side of the body to the other at the actual spinal cord itself. So that's where the information is transferred over. So now it's gone from one side of the body to the other, and it transfers up this part of the spinal cord called the spinothalamic tract. So up the spinal cord, up to the thalamus in the VPL, and there it's in that sort of nucleus in the VPL there, where information is sort of understood in the cerebral cortex and a decision is made. So that's the process of going from a first order neuron to the second order neuron in the spinal cord, up to the third order neuron, which is in the cerebral cortex. And really, that's as much as detail as we need you to go into and understand in relation to an ascending pathway. So an ascending pathway, it's sensory, information's transferred up, going from the peripheral nervous to the central nervous system, and crosses over, in this situation, this tract, it decussates in the actual spinal cord itself, before going up to the cerebral cortex and the nucleus. Now, the only thing I'm going to add to that, if we go to the next slide, which is slide number 21, it just gives you some examples of different pathways. And all I want you to understand in this particular slide here, where it says comparison of main pathways, is we just looked at the spinothalamic tract, and that's got 3 order neurons. Axons in the spinal cord. So axons in the spinal cord are what they call second order ones for this particular pathway. It ascends in the spinal cord, meaning it goes up the spinal cord contralaterally, meaning that's where it decussates. It crosses the midline in the spinal cord, but the information is processed in the VPL of that area, which I showed in the slide before, and it's processed in the third order in the sensory cortex. And that's different to the other pathway, which we could look at as well, which was presented in the lecture, but you don't need to know that at this particular time. The only main difference structurally here is where it crosses over, and it crosses over the medulla, meaning it stays on the one side. In other words, where it ascends in the spinal cord, ipsilateral just means it stays in the spinal cord at that particular stage on the same side, so it's still a first order, and then it crosses over the medulla where it becomes a second order and then third order like the other one. So again, you don't need to go through in that particular information. I'm just showing the differences between 2 different ascending pathways, where they cross over or decussate, but the main thing is understanding that it happens in 3 different stages, and that's shown visually in those slides. And the process is transferring information from the peripheral nervous system to the central nervous system, where it terminates in the sensory cortex, where a decision is then made what to do, and then we go through the motor pathway, which I'll deliver next. So hopefully that's sort of simplified and makes it easy for you guys to understand about what level I'm asking you to be able to process and understand for your exam. So the next slide we'll come up with, or next video, will be on motor pathways. All right, okay, speak to you soon.